Non-duality addresses two essential questions. One, how may we find lasting peace and happiness? And two, what is the nature of reality, or what is the ultimate nature of the universe? In response to the first question, how may we find lasting peace and happiness? The response is simply, happiness is your nature, or you are happiness itself. Now we might legitimately object and say, if happiness is my nature, why is it not experienced all the time? Happiness seems to be a feeling that comes and goes like all other feelings, and is obviously, as such, not present all the time. The reason why the innate happiness of our essential nature is not experienced all the time is because, whilst everybody has a sense of being their self, or being myself, not everybody knows their self clearly. And it is this absence of clear self-knowledge that is responsible for the absence of peace and happiness. In response to the second question, what is the nature of reality, or what is the ultimate nature of the universe? The non-dual teaching suggests that reality is a single, infinite, indivisible whole made of pure consciousness. And the universe as we know it is the activity of this consciousness. And just like the world that we dream of at night is the activity of our own mind. And yet, in order to view that dreamed world, our own mind localizes itself within its own dream as the dreamed character, from whose perspective the activity of our own mind appears as the dreamed world. So the non-dual teaching suggests that this single, infinite, indivisible consciousness, whose activity is the universe, localizes itself in the form of each of our minds, from whose perspective it knows itself as the apparently outside world. However, whether we are open to this possibility that the universe is the activity of a universal mind or consciousness, or whether we believe the prevailing materialist paradigm, namely that the universe is made out of stuff called matter. In either case, we as individuals are a microcosm of the universe, a part of the universe, and as such, the essential nature of our self is the same as the essential nature of the universe. Therefore, whichever paradigm we subscribe to, the consciousness-only model or the prevailing materialist model, in order to know what the universe really is, it is all we need do is to know what we really are. And therefore self-knowledge is the answer to the second question, what is the nature of reality? Just as it is the answer to the first question, what is the source of lasting peace and happiness? The first question is a question about our inner life, our feelings, about peace and happiness. The second question is more philosophical in nature. What is the nature of reality? And we are all here, either directly or indirectly, this week because we have asked ourselves one or both of these questions. But the answer to these two very different questions is the same. Self-knowledge. And it is for this reason that the words "know thyself" are carved above the entrance to the temple of Apollo at Delphi, indicating that the knowledge of ourself stands at the very threshold of Western civilization. And that this knowledge of ourself is not only the means by which the lasting peace and happiness for which all people long may be found, but is also the answer to the question that has plagued people's minds for millennia, namely, what is the nature of reality? As such, self-knowledge is the highest form of knowledge. And the investigation into the nature of the self, the highest endeavor upon which any mind can embark. As such, self-knowledge is not only the direct path to peace and happiness, it is the very foundation upon which any civilized society must be based. And it is for this reason that in the non-dual teaching, in whatever culture it has been expressed, so much emphasis is put on this investigation into the nature of our self or the nature of our own mind. And although everybody has a sense of their self, not everybody knows their self clearly. Everybody, not just those relatively few of us who are interested in these matters, but all 7 billion of us have a sense of being myself. But most people's sense of their self, or knowledge of their self, is so thoroughly mixed up with the content of their experience that they do not know their self clearly. So the first thing we do here is to make this investigation into the nature of ourself. What am I prior to experience? By experience in this context, I mean objective experience, thoughts, images, feelings, memories, sensations, perceptions, activities, relationships. What am I prior to the arising of any particular experience? Thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions are continually appearing, existing, and disappearing. What am I prior to the appearance or after the disappearance of any thought, feeling, sensation, or perception? Some of you will have asked yourself this question many times. Some of you will be asking it for the first time, but everybody ask it as if for the first time. The essence of anything is the aspect of that thing that cannot be removed from it. Thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions are continually being added to us and then removed from us. When everything that can be removed from us is removed from us, what remains? Only that is essential to us. Only that is worthy of the name I. When we get undressed at night, we take off layer after layer after layer of clothing until only our naked body remains. When we take off, so to speak, or remove all the layers of thought, feeling, memory, sensation and perception, only our naked being remains. Our naked self. What is traditionally referred to as enlightenment or awakening is not some marvelous, extraordinary experience that happens to us. It is simply the recognition of the nature of our essential self or naked being, its recognition of itself. Nothing could be less extraordinary or less exotic than the simple recognition of the nature of our own being. In fact, it is not really necessary to remove our thoughts, feelings, sensations or perceptions. It is only necessary to see clearly that they are not essential to us. Our thoughts, feelings, sensations and perceptions do not need to be changed or manipulated or got rid of. Any more than it is necessary to take off one's clothes in order to be in touch with one's naked body. The only reason we seem not to be in touch with our essential self and its innate peace and happiness is because we have allowed ourself to become mixed with the content of experience. We have allowed ourselves to become colored or conditioned by thoughts, feelings, sensations, perceptions, activities, and relationships. just as a screen becomes coloured by the images of a movie. Our self has become coloured by the objects of experience. And as a result, seems to have acquired their limitations. That is, the limitations of our thoughts, images, feelings, memories, sensations, perceptions, activities, and relationships. What is our naked, uncoloured self or being? When I suggest that all that is necessary is for us to know our naked, uncoloured or unconditioned being, I do not mean to imply that we are one thing and that our being is something else that we can know in the same way that we know a thought, feeling, sensation, or perception. We are essentially our naked, unconditioned self. It is we who knows ourself. It is our self that knows itself. But its knowledge of itself, that is, our self's knowledge of itself, has become so mixed up with its knowledge of thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions that it no longer knows itself clearly. It knows itself partially. Everybody has this partial knowledge of their self. That's why everybody, all 7 billion of us, have this sense of being myself. So everyone has this partial knowledge of their self. But not everybody has the full knowledge of their self. That is, not everybody knows their self clearly. When the actor, John Smith, plays the part of King Lear, his knowledge of himself becomes mixed with his knowledge of King Lear's thoughts and feelings. And as a result, he no longer knows himself as John Smith, but seems to know himself as King Lear. King Lear still has a feeling of being myself. And his feeling of being myself is a mixture of John Smith's knowledge of himself, plus thoughts and feelings, plus King Lear's thoughts and feelings. Likewise, everybody has the knowledge or sense of being myself. And that sense of being myself is a mixture of consciousness's knowledge of itself, plus the limitations of experience. And this mixture of consciousness's knowledge of itself, plus the limitations of experience, makes this compound of consciousness plus the limitations of experience, makes the temporary, finite, separate self that most people believe and feel themselves to be. All that is necessary is to unmix ourself, to extricate ourself from the limitations that we seem to acquire from experience. And when we are divested of all the qualities or limitations that we acquire from experience, our naked, irreducible self or being simply shines as it is. We don't suddenly become a new kind of self, or an enlightened self, or an awakened self. The self that we always and already are is simply revealed, laid bare. In other words, there is no such thing as an enlightened self. There is just the light of the self, always shining with the same brightness. Sometimes temporarily darkened by experience. But never actually ceasing to be the self that it always is. Just as the sun's light is sometimes darkened by clouds. But even then it is still shining with the same brightness. When the clouds disperse, the sun is not created anew, it is simply revealed. Likewise, when our self loses the qualities or the limitations that it acquires from experience, we do not become a new, enlightened self. The self that we always and already are is simply revealed. That is why this revelation is referred to as a recognition or a remembrance of ourself. It is the knowing again of something that we have always known, but which was obscured or partially covered by experience. All our experience is pervaded by ourself. All that is necessary is to discern clearly ourself in the midst of all experience. Our self is not really buried behind or underneath experience. It is shining brightly in the midst of all experience, just as a screen is not concealed behind an image, but shines in and ultimately as the image. The image is just a colouring of the screen. Likewise, all experience is a colouring of ourself. No experience obscures ourself unless we give it permission to do so, in which case it will seem to do so. If you remove all the colours from the movie, what remains? Only the colourless screen. If we remove all the limitations of experience, what remains? Only our unlimited self. Thank you.